the morning.
Welcome back to our channel for another explosive dive into the world of the young and the restless. Today is a beautiful day, but the skies over Genoa City are about to turn pitch black as we uncover a devastating tragedy. Grab your coffee and brace yourselves because the Abbott family is about to be shattered in ways we never thought possible. The echoes of a single deafening gunshot are about to reverberate through the opulent halls of Genoa City, signaling the catastrophic end of an era and the tragic downfall of Billy Abbott. For weeks, audiences have watched with bated breath as Billy spiraled into a manic obsession, desperately trying to reclaim Chancellor Industries from the icy grip of Cain Ashby. This ruthless pursuit has already cost him dearly, forcing him to sabotage Sally Spectra's new venture, Spectra Charles, and pushing the pregnant Sally to the agonizing brink of considering an abortion to protect her unborn child from his erratic world. But the collateral damage of Billy's ambition has only just begun. What happens when a man already pushed to the absolute edge of his sanity by professional ruin and romantic devastation uncovers a secret so profoundly personal and heartbreaking that it shatters his very reality? Will this be the moment Billy Abbott finally crosses the point? Billy's relentless investigation into his mother's secretive maneuvers was initially fueled by pure corporate vengeance. He was convinced that Jill Abbott's decision to oust him from Chancellor and install Cain Ashby as the sole trustee was a calculated business betrayal, a ruthless move to protect Catherine Chancellor's legacy from his perceived incompetence. Every late night spent scouring encrypted documents, every shadow he chased was driven by the agonizing sting of his mother's lack of faith. He believed Jill was merely hiding financial assets or a hidden heir, something that could be fought in a boardroom with lawyers and corporate leverage. But as Billy dug deeper, noticing the subtle, terrifying gaps in Jill's schedule and the highly classified medical files hidden beneath layers of corporate jargon, a chilling realization began to take hold. The secret Jill was guarding with her life was not about profit margins or stock shares. It was a matter of life and death. Could Billy truly handle the apocalyptic truth that was waiting for him in the dark? The turning point arrives on a seemingly quiet evening when Billy, driven by a paranoid need for answers, silently infiltrates the Chancellor estate. Moving like a ghost through the very halls that once represented his birthright, he approaches the study, only to freeze as the muffled, urgent voices of Jill and Cain Ashby bleed through the heavy oak doors. Billy's heart pounds against his ribs as he presses his ear to the wood, expecting to hear them plotting his final corporate demise. Instead, what he hears makes his blood run cold. Jill's voice, usually so commanding and sharp, is reduced to a fragile, trembling whisper, speaking of deteriorating test results, aggressive timelines, and the terrifying inevitability of her own mortality. Cain's voice, surprisingly gentle yet laced with his signature control, assures her that the transition of power will be seamless once she is gone. How will Billy process the horrifying realization that his mother is orchestrating her own endgame while he has been blindly waging a petty war? Unable to contain the tempest of emotions violently churning inside his chest, Billy violently kicks the heavy oak doors open, shattering the quiet intimacy of the room. The sight that greets him is one that will be permanently burned into his retinas. His fiercely independent mother, Jill Abbott, looking smaller and more vulnerable than he has ever seen her, clutching a medical file as if it were her last lifeline. The air in the room instantly turns to ice as Billy, trembling with a volatile mixture of profound grief and explosive rage, demands the unvarnished truth. He refuses to be treated like a fragile child any longer, cornering Jill with the fragmented pieces of the conversation he just overheard. The corporate titan is stripped away, leaving only a desperate son begging for his mother to deny the nightmare unfolding before his eyes. Will Jill finally drop the impenetrable fortress she has built around her failing body and give her son the heartbreaking truth he so desperately seeks? Backed into a corner with nowhere left to hide, Jill finally breaks down, the tears she has fought so hard to suppress streaming down her pale face. In a voice choked with agonizing sorrow, she confesses the devastating reality. She is battling a terminal illness, and her time in Genoa City and on this earth is rapidly running out. She explains, between heart-wrenching sobs, that her ruthless decision to remove Billy from Chancellor Industries was never born out of malice, but out of a desperate, terrified mother's need to protect her legacy before she dies. She knew Billy's erratic nature and his historical instability would make him an easy target for predators like Victor Newman once she was gone. She made the ultimate sacrifice, breaking her son's heart to save his future, carrying the unbearable weight of her impending death in complete, agonizing silence. But can a confession rooted in such profound maternal love ever heal the catastrophic psychological damage it has already inflicted on Billy? Just as the sheer magnitude of Jill's terminal diagnosis begins to paralyze Billy with grief, a second, infinitely more toxic revelation is dropped into the room like a live grenade. Jill, looking pleadingly at her son, admits that she hasn't been carrying this unbearable burden entirely alone. She turns her tear-filled eyes toward Cain Ashby, confessing that Cain has known about her terminal condition. Cain was not just a corporate pawn or a usurper. He was her chosen confidant, the man she trusted to hold her darkest secret and manage her final affairs while she actively pushed her own flesh and blood away. The room spins violently for Billy as the pieces fall into place. His mother didn't just deem him unfit to run a company, she deemed him too fragile, too unstable, and too unworthy to comfort her on her deathbed, choosing his most hated rival to fill the role of the devoted son. How will Billy's already fractured psyche withstand the ultimate betrayal of being replaced by Cain? The grief that had briefly softened Billy's features instantly evaporates, replaced by a blinding, apocalyptic fury that radiates from every pore of his body. He looks at Cain, who stands there with a sickeningly calm, almost smug demeanor, radiating the quiet triumph of a man who has won the ultimate victory. Cain's very presence in this deeply intimate, tragic family moment is a grotesque insult to Billy's existence. Billy's mind violently flashes to the collateral damage of this secret, how his desperate need to prove himself led him to destroy Sally Spectra's business, how his manic behavior has pushed Sally to consider aborting their unborn child, all because Jill chose to manipulate him rather than. He realizes that his entire life, his ruined relationships, and his shattered self-worth have been orchestrated by the two people standing before him. Will this catastrophic realization be the spark that finally detonates the powder keg of Billy's sanity? Without another word to his weeping mother, Billy turns on his heel and storms out of the Chancellor estate, his mind descending into a dark, terrifying abyss where reason and logic no longer exist. He is a man who has lost everything: his company, his partner's trust, his unborn child's future, and now his mother's faith. The streets of Genoa City blur past him as he drives recklessly, consumed by a singular venomous thought: Cain Ashby must pay. Cain, who weaponized a dying woman's fear to steal a legacy. Cain, who stood by and watched Billy destroy his own life, knowing all along that the game was rigged. As Billy's thoughts spiral deeper into madness, his hand instinctively reaches into the glove compartment of his car, his fingers wrapping around the cold, heavy steel of a loaded firearm. Is there anyone left in Genoa City who can intercept Billy before he commits an act of irreversible violence? Billy finally tracks Cain down to a secluded, dimly lit office space, the shadows perfectly mirroring the darkness that has completely enveloped Billy's soul. He kicks the door open, startling Cain, who is calmly reviewing the very trust documents that give him absolute control over the Chancellor Empire. Cain looks up, his initial surprise quickly morphing into a condescending smirk. He looks at Billy not as a grieving son, but as a pathetic, erratic nuisance who has finally come to. Cain's arrogant posture, his perfectly tailored suit, and his complete lack of remorse act as gasoline poured directly onto the roaring fire of Billy's rage. Cain casually reminds Billy that Jill made her choice, that she knew Billy was a volatile liability who would burn the company to the ground, and that Kane is simply fulfilling a dying woman's final wish. Will Kane's arrogant refusal to show even a shred of empathy be the fatal mistake that seals his... The verbal altercation instantly escalates into a brutal, primal confrontation as Billy lunges across the room, his hands violently gripping the lapels of Kane's jacket. The two men crash into the mahogany desk, sending highly classified Chancellor documents fluttering to the floor like dead leaves. Kane, physically formidable and fiercely defensive, fights back, throwing a vicious punch that catches Billy across the jaw. But Billy is no longer fighting for a company. He is fighting for his shattered identity, his ruined family, and the profound humiliation of being discarded. The physical struggle is chaotic, a desperate tangle of limbs and unbridled hatred as they smash into bookshelves and shatter glass across the floor. Kane manages to shove Billy backward, panting heavily, and sneers that Billy is proving exactly why Jill never trusted him with anything important. How much more psychological torment can Billy endure before his fragile grip on reality completely... In a split second that will forever alter the fabric of Genoa City, Billy's blinding rage completely overtakes his rational... Driven by the agonizing weight of his mother's impending death, the betrayal of her secret pact, and the devastating loss of Sally's faith, Billy reaches into his jacket. The cold steel of the gun is drawn, its dark barrel pointed directly at Kane's chest. Time seems to slow to an agonizing crawl. Kane's arrogant smirk instantly vanishes, replaced by wide-eyed, paralyzing terror as he stares down the barrel of his own mortar. He raises his hands, opening his mouth to plead, to reason, to beg the unstable Abbott heir to step back from the precipice. But Billy is deaf to everything except the roaring tempest of his own pain. He sees Kane not as a man, but as the physical embodiment of every failure, every betrayal, and every loss he has ever suffered. Will Billy find the strength to lower the weapon, or has the darkness finally consumed him whole? A deafening gunshot violently tears through the silence of the room, the explosive sound echoing off the walls and shattering the fragile peace of Genoa City forever. The flash of the muzzle illuminates the sheer terror on Kane's face for a fraction of a second before the sheer force of the impact throws him backward. Kane collapses onto the hardwood floor, a blooming crimson stain rapidly spreading across his... The heavy silence that follows the gunshot is more terrifying than the explosion itself, broken only by the ragged, panicked gasps of Kane struggling for air. Billy stands frozen, the smoking gun still trembling in his hand, his eyes wide with the horrifying realization of what he has just done. The manic fog that clouded his mind instantly evaporates, leaving behind a cold, paralyzing dread. Has Billy Abbott just committed the ultimate, unforgivable sin, transforming himself into the very monster his mother always feared he would become? As the reality of the bloody scene sets in, the catastrophic ripple effects of Billy's violent act begin to materialize in the shadows of his... This single pull of the trigger has not only jeopardized Kane's life, but has effectively signed the death warrant for the Abbott family's legacy. When the police arrive, Billy will be stripped of his freedom, leaving a terminally ill Jill to die with the unbearable guilt that her secret destroyed her son. Lily Winters, completely oblivious to the depth of this betrayal, will be thrust into a chaotic corporate war zone, desperately trying to salvage Chancellor Industries from the blood-soaked ruins. And what of Sally Spector? When the pregnant, deeply traumatized Sally learns that the father of her unborn child has just committed attempted murder in a fit of rage, it will undoubtedly solidify her agonizing decision to terminate the pregnancy, erasing any hope of a future together. As the sirens begin to wail in the distance, growing louder with every passing second, one chilling question remains. How will Genoa City ever recover from the apocalyptic fallout of Billy Abbott's deadly decision?